Castle Fire was one of the most devastating fires California has seen in its history. This fire destroyed 40% of the redwood trees in that single grove. Now that might not seem like much, but in actuality, that equaled 14% of all of the giant sequoias in the world.
It burned through 10 giant sequoia groves, and we lost over between 7,000 and 10,000 monarch giant sequoias.
Even though it wasn't one of the biggest fires in the 2020 fire season, it was a really important one. An ancient forest sequesters 3 times more CO2 than a younger forest, so it's massive in that sense.
As my kids were growing up, my husband and I would take them up to the mountains, and we would stand before these trees and we would say, "Can you imagine the people that stood here?" And we would just share these stories, and we'd say, "This tree's been here for 1,000 years." I mean, can you imagine the trees that have withstood all kinds of history, and today they're just burned logs? It really makes me upset when I think about it.
The ultimate goal of Rotarians is to make the world a better place. We recently added a 7th area of focus having to do with the environment, simply because it's so important.
Rotary has wanted to do whatever helps our world to be better for the inhabitants that live in it.
Porterville Rotary Club has been pretty enthusiastic about doing restoration, and so right after the Castle Fire, they reached out to the Sequoia National Forest and asked how they could help. We did a small project along the highway and planted 600 trees. They had gotten a lot of feedback from other Rotarians and other parts of the state that all wanted to help as well.
There were so many people wanting to do good work. It's like, well, let's stir the pot. Let's, do this thing together, and we can have more impact.
While we relied on the experience of the Porterville Club, we also brought in all of the other clubs, virtually all of the clubs in both Kings and Tulare County for this effort.
So I talked to the Rotarians. I said, what if we just pull everybody together and have a day where the community, everyone who's trying to do reforestation, we all work together.
We had over 100 Rotarians show up, along with probably 30 or 40 other community members. So we had close to 150 people on the mountain that day putting these trees in the ground. We put in over 6,000 trees.
Redwood trees, pine trees. We planted trees that were indigenous to the area that should have been there. I think the wonderful thing about Rotary projects is when you ask a bunch of Rotarians to become involved with a project and they show up, they don't stand around and ask, well, what should I do? Well, where do I go? Well, they get to work.
It turned into this huge event, and it was very cathartic for the communities. I heard all kinds of stories about how it was like the first time people felt hope since their homes had burned, feeling like they were able to do something positive.
So the Rotarians were really amazing. All hands on deck, just their full force, and this amazing vibe on the mountain. And now these saplings are doing incredibly well. The Rotary Club was absolutely essential in making this thing happen. We could not have done it without them.
The most rewarding aspect for me is to know that the trees will be there someday, that the world gets to enjoy what we did today.
Maybe I've made a big difference and maybe I've made a little difference, but doing something is always better than doing nothing. It's always working with Rotary, a tremendous experience to get along with all of these people whose sole goal is to do good in the world.
I think we are at a tipping point and we need to step up now. And I think that's where these projects are really important, because they can help trigger systemic change to happen.
One of the things that those fires have taught us is that giant sequoias are fragile and they need our help. We have a lot of work to do, and there's going to be lots of opportunities.
Anytime you can help the environment, you should become involved and you should get out there and do it.
We hope that this can help other communities be able to put together what they need to do to help their environments in the process of recovery, and also to let them know that there's a lot of Rotarians in our area that would be very happy to help them to do it.